Intimacy of touch, the physical love touch. Intimacy of touch is not just about physical affection. It's about presence, attunement, and emotional anchoring expressed through the body. At its core, this principle speaks to our primal human need to be held, seen, and soothed through contact. From birth, we rely on touch to understand love, safety, and belonging. In intimate relationships, this principle becomes a lifeline. When it's nurtured, relationships feel safe and alive. But when it's ignored, when affection fades, when routine overtakes connection, or when physical distance replaces warmth, emotional disconnection quietly seeps in. Many couples don't even realize they've drifted apart until the absence of touch becomes the loudest silence between them. We often assume that love, once spoken, sustains itself, but touch is the daily reminder that love is felt, not just thought about or talked about. Imagine a couple who used to hold hands, kiss often, or wrap themselves around each other while sleeping. Over time, those gestures vanish. Not because love is gone, but because life got busy. The danger is that without regular physical contact, partners start to feel unseen, even in the same room. Loneliness can grow in physical proximity if the body no longer feels welcomed. In contrast, intentional touch, even in small doses, can shift the emotional climate of a relationship. A gentle hand on the shoulder during a tense moment, a soft kiss on the forehead before sleep, or simply sitting close enough that your knees touch during dinner. These aren't grand acts, but they are powerful messages. They say, I still want to feel you. I still choose closeness. It's not about sexuality. It's about choosing presence in each other's emotional orbit. Sometimes the most healing moments come when nothing needs to be said. One partner is overwhelmed, maybe even crying, and the other doesn't try to fix it. They just wrap their arms around them and breathe together. That kind of physical love holds space. It whispers, I'm with you. You're safe here. No solution required, just the honesty of skin-to-skin comfort. Intimacy of touch allows partners to be soft together, even in life's hardest chapters. Let's also name how touch can bridge conflict. Say you've had a disagreement. You've talked it out, but there's still static in the air. Then one of you reaches out, takes a hand, or places a palm on the heart. That gesture isn't erasure, it's acknowledgement. It says, we can move forward from this, together. The body becomes a tool of repair, not just connection. Conflict isn't just resolved in words, it's often completed in the return to touch. Touch is also one of the ways partners reestablish desire in long-term relationships. It's not always about sexual intimacy. It might begin with a back rub while watching a movie, a slow caress on the arm while cooking, or simply brushing hair out of the other's eyes. These tiny moments create a sensual undercurrent. They say, I still delight in your body, not just your mind. Keeping physical touch alive maintains not just emotional closeness, but romantic charge. And not all touch looks the same. Some people need lots of affection. Others need stillness with contact. One person may love playful touch, tickling, teasing, spontaneous hugs. Another may prefer quiet touch, hand-holding, leaning against each other. Respecting and learning each other's touch language becomes an act of emotional intelligence. Intimacy grows not from how much touch you give, but how attuned that touch is to your partner's nervous system. We also see this principle play out in times of illness, aging, or grief. A partner tending to another's pain, helping them bathe, rubbing tired feet, supporting their body as they recover, is not just offering care. They're saying, your body matters to me, even now, especially now. Intimacy of touch doesn't fade with beauty or youth. It matures into reverence, a deep honoring of shared humanity. In the end, when touch is given with care, consistency, and consent, it becomes the body's way of saying what the heart feels daily. You're here. I see you. I still want to be close. Without it, even the most verbally expressive relationships can wither. With it, even quiet love becomes radiant. This is not about being touchy-feely. It's about being human. And in love, being human together is where intimacy truly lives. A woman is folding laundry at the end of a long day, shoulders slightly slumped, eyes tired. Her partner walks by, doesn't say much, but softly places a hand on her back and lingers just long enough to offer stillness. No words, just presence. She doesn't flinch or stop folding. But something in her exhales. That's the kind of touch we overlook. It doesn't demand attention. It simply says, I see your effort. I see you. Intimacy doesn't always erupt. Sometimes it just quietly rests its palm on your spine. Or imagine a couple driving in silence, no tension, just a still evening. The passenger places their hand on the driver's leg while staring out the window. No conversation follows. It's not flirtation. It's not even affection in the traditional sense. It's grounding, a way of saying, "We're here together. I feel you." These gestures are often missed by outsiders, but between the two people involved, they're deeply intimate. They register in the body long after the moment has passed. Consider moments of shared stillness. Two people sitting beside each other on a couch, reading different books, sipping tea. One absent-mindedly lets their foot rest against the other's ankle. Neither comments, but the skin-to-skin contact holds the room like a quiet vow. Even when we're in our own worlds, we're still tethered. In this way, intimacy of touch becomes not a need, but a rhythm, a soft, wordless awareness. There's also power in instinctive touch, especially during sleep. When one person turns over and unconsciously reaches out for the other's arm, stomach, or back, it's not performative. It's primal. A half-asleep gesture that says, "Even in dreams, I'm drawn to your presence." These involuntary touches reveal what the body trusts before the mind even registers it, that love has become safe enough to rest against. Think about moments of vulnerability, post-surgery, anxiety attacks, or emotional breakdowns. Words feel distant. The partner who simply holds, strokes a forehead, or stays seated with a hand in yours offers more than comfort. They offer belonging. It's the body saying, "I will hold space for all of you," messy, shaken, unfiltered. That kind of touch holds no agenda. It doesn't fix, it doesn't push, it simply remains. Now let's look at repair. After a long argument, some wounds are too raw for immediate reconciliation. But perhaps the two sit beside each other, breathing quietly, and one places their hand close, not quite touching, but just there. If accepted, that hand moves closer until fingers finally entwine. No apologies yet, but something shifts. This slow re-entry through the body allows emotional trust to rebuild without forcing resolution. It's reconciliation in progress, tactile and tentative, but real. In the chaos of parenting or caregiving, touch can remind partners that they still see each other beyond roles. A father brushing hair away from his partner's face as she rocks their baby. A quick kiss on the temple while she chops vegetables, both of them too tired for full conversations. These moments are not interruptions. They are love interwoven into the fabric of the day, a slow drip that keeps connection hydrated. Touch can also carry memory. A certain way of running fingers down someone's arm, or pulling them in by the waist, unique to a couple, becomes an emotional timestamp. Years later, when repeated, that gesture brings them back, not just to a shared moment, but to who they were to each other in that moment. In this way, touch becomes an archive, a living record of tenderness passed hand to hand. Ultimately, the most powerful touches don't announce themselves. They don't ask for attention. They're not meant for social media. They simply exist, quiet offerings of presence that wrap around the body like whispers. And in those whispers, love doesn't shout. It settles, it rests, it remembers. Intimacy of sensate, the love language of the senses. Intimacy of sensate is about engaging the 5 senses as sacred channels of connection. It's not just about being physically close, it's about being sensually present. To be heard, seen, touched, tasted, and smelled is to be known in your full sensory existence. When this principle is nurtured, it creates a deeply embodied relationship where lovers attune to each other beyond logic and into lived, felt experience. But when it's ignored, a couple can fall into a flat, functional bond, where love becomes mechanical and presence becomes a formality. They stop noticing each other, and slowly, they stop feeling alive together. This isn't about sensuality in the sexual sense, though it absolutely enhances that. It's about whether your partner really looks at you when you speak, whether they hear the layers in your voice, not just your words, whether they smell you after a long day and still lean in, whether they savor your cooking with pleasure, whether they know your voice in a crowd, the rhythm of your laugh, the tone that signals fatigue. These sensory exchanges build emotional memory. They root you in the moment and in each other. Take sound. A partner who listens with their full body, nods, maintains eye contact, hears even what's not being said, makes the other feel held. Sometimes it's in tone, saying, "I'm proud of you," not just as words, but with warmth, awe, delight, or recognizing the subtle waver in a partner's voice that means they're overwhelmed, even if they say they're fine. That's sensory intimacy, deep listening with your ears and your intuition. Then there's sight, noticing the new shirt, seeing the tiredness under their eyes, meeting their gaze without distraction, watching how they move and reading the story behind it. Couples who maintain visual connection, across a table, across a room, even in moments of silence, keep a thread of intimacy alive. A lingering glance can say, "I still choose you," in ways 1,000 reassurances can't. Being seen isn't just visual, it's spiritual visibility through physical attention. Taste plays its role in both playful and nurturing ways. Sharing a favorite meal, feeding each other bites, remembering how your partner takes their coffee. These things feel small, but they are visceral acts of devotion. One partner might surprise the other with a nostalgic dish from childhood. The gesture says, "I know where you come from. I want to taste your memories with you." Food, flavor, and intimacy are ancient companions. Smell is underrated but deeply primal. You know how certain scents evoke people we love, even years later? The scent of their skin, their pillow, the cologne they always wore. These things linger in our nervous system. A partner who leans in and says, "You smell like home," is doing more than complimenting hygiene. They're affirming presence at the level of instinct. That's embodiment. That's intimate sensory anchoring. Touch, as part of the sensate family, deepens this further. Not just contact, but texture. How someone strokes your skin, the temperature of their hands, the familiar weight of their body beside you. These sensory imprints become rituals. A couple who explores each other slowly, with hands, eyes, and voices, learns to build a full-body trust. The body then becomes not just a vessel, but a sanctuary of shared experience. When this principle is neglected, partners may feel invisible, like their presence is being tolerated, not tuned into. They may stop expressing themselves in sensory ways because it goes unacknowledged. The relationship becomes a series of tasks, not textures. To reawaken the sensate bond, couples can re-engage the 5 senses intentionally, look into each other's eyes longer, describe what they love about the other's voice, cook together, shower together, linger longer in scent and taste. These aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. In a world that pulls us into screens and numbs us with noise, sensate intimacy invites us back into the body, into now, into this person. It reminds us that love doesn't just live in the mind. It breathes through the senses, moment to moment, building a relationship that is not just known, but fully felt. A woman comes home from work, drained and silent. Her partner doesn't bombard her with questions. Instead, he listens, not just to her words, but to the quiet sighs, the way her keys hit the counter, the subtle shift in her tone. He brews her favorite tea without being asked. As he hands it to her, he says nothing, but his silence listens. This isn't dramatic, but it's deeply sensate. He is attuned not just to what she says, but to how her presence changes the room. Another moment, she walks into the kitchen wearing a dress she hasn't worn in years. He looks up from his phone and actually sees her. His eyes soften. He takes a moment to scan her fully, not with lust, but with reverence. He says, "You look like the woman I fell in love with in that cafe." In that glance, in those words, she feels seen, not just visually acknowledged, but mirrored back to herself with affection. The power wasn't in the compliment. It was in the way he paused and noticed. In long-term relationships, this kind of sensory attention often fades, not out of neglect, but familiarity. But some couples preserve it through ritual. One might always rest their head on the other's lap when watching a movie, because they love the feeling of fingers brushing through their hair. Another may trace slow circles on their partner's palm while they talk, grounding them in the body. These are not needs, they are offerings. Subtle gestures that say, "I'm still learning your texture." Taste can show up in the smallest domestic acts. She bites into a spoonful of his cooking, pauses, and smiles. "You always put too much garlic, and I love that." It's not just about flavor, it's about familiarity. It's about the delight of recognizing each other's sensory imprint. Or he makes her favorite cake on her birthday, not perfectly, but with effort. She tastes it and laughs, saying it's dry, but she eats it anyway, slowly, savoring his intention. That moment holds more sweetness than sugar ever could. Then there's the smell of presence. He buries his face in her neck while she's folding laundry. No words, no seduction, just breath, just scent. She smells like home, like safety. That memory stays with him later, even when she's not around. Or she wraps herself in his hoodie when he's away. Not because she's cold, but because his scent is woven into the fabric. Intimacy of smell is deeply animal, and yet it's one of the most emotionally anchoring sensory experiences we have. Sound is often overlooked, but it holds its own intimacy. A partner who hums while cooking, the way she laughs from the belly when something genuinely surprises her, the cadence of his footsteps coming down the hall. These sounds build emotional architecture. A couple who really hears each other doesn't just respond to words, they respond to tone, volume, silence. A pause before speaking might mean vulnerability. A shift in laughter might mean weariness. Listening like this is an act of love. Consider how some partners use voice to soothe. He knows her stress cue is fast speech, so he speaks slower, softer, to regulate her. Or she hears the tightness in his throat when he says, "I'm fine," and gently asks again, "What kind of fine?" It's not interrogation, it's sensory intuition. They've memorized each other's frequencies. They speak less to fix and more to feel. In these moments, intimacy lives between the words, in the vibrations beneath them. Even the act of dressing becomes sensate intimacy. One partner notices how the other's fabric choices shift with mood. Soft cotton when they're low, structure when they need to feel strong. Maybe they choose their scent for the day based on who they'll be near. Maybe one steals a kiss on the collarbone and murmurs, "You always smell like something I can't stop remembering." Sensory love makes even getting dressed a conversation in affection. Ultimately, intimacy of sensate teaches us that presence isn't passive, it's active attention through the senses. To be smelled and not flinched at. To be seen and not corrected. To be tasted and remembered. To be listened to even in silence. To be touched with intention, not assumption. These aren't grand romantic gestures. They are the quiet reverberations of love. Subtle but so alive they echo in the body long after they pass. Intimacy of kindness, the soft power of compassion and love. Intimacy of kindness is the emotional atmosphere that holds a relationship together when everything else falters. It's the tone of your voice when you disagree, the patience in your body when your partner is struggling, the generosity of letting them be who they are, even when you don't fully understand it. This principle isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself. But when it's missing, the absence is felt like a slow, aching erosion. Without kindness, even deep love can start to feel sharp, cold, or conditional. We often talk about love in terms of passion or compatibility, but kindness is what makes that love feel safe. It's not just being nice. It's how you hold your partner's vulnerability. It's how you respond when they forget something important or fall short in a moment you needed them most. Kindness and intimacy means choosing not to weaponize your partner's weaknesses, even when you feel hurt. It's a conscious decision to meet them where they are, with warmth, not withdrawal. When couples don't prioritize this kind of emotional gentleness, they may stay together but start to lose softness. Jokes become sarcastic. Support turns into criticism masked as concern. A partner starts to feel more like a project than a person. The relationship functions, but it no longer nourishes. Over time, both people shrink. One becomes guarded, the other resentful. The absence of kindness doesn't always scream. It often just quietly stiffens the air between two people. But when this intimacy is present, it transforms conflict. Imagine a disagreement where one person is overwhelmed and reactive. The other, instead of escalating, softens their voice and says, "I know this is hard. Let's slow down." That response doesn't mean you're giving in. It means you're choosing to protect the bond even in stress. Intimacy of kindness allows couples to have hard conversations without destroying trust in the process. It also shows up in how we allow our partners to be different from us. Maybe one is extroverted, loud, and impulsive. The other is quiet, methodical, and reserved. Without kindness, these differences become points of friction. But with compassion, they become points of curiosity. One says, "That's not how I would handle it, but I trust it works for you." Kindness doesn't require sameness. It requires space. It says, "I don't need to shape you into my image to love you well. Acts of kindness don't need to be grand. They're often the smallest things. Covering your partner with a blanket when they fall asleep on the couch, leaving a glass of water at their bedside, listening with full attention when they're venting about something you don't fully understand, or simply pausing before reacting, choosing not to speak from your wound. These small, merciful decisions are the fabric of emotional safety. Kindness also shows up when your partner is in a season of failure or uncertainty. Maybe they've lost their job or their self-esteem is low. Intimacy here isn't just about cheering them on. It's about making space for their pain without trying to fix it. It's saying, "You don't have to impress me. I'm staying, even in this version of you." That kind of love is medicine. It reminds someone they don't have to earn tenderness. They already belong to it. In longer relationships, kindness becomes the antidote to boredom or irritation. When routines dull the edge of romance, choosing to compliment your partner or to thank them for something ordinary revives warmth. It doesn't take much to say, "I appreciate how you always handle the laundry," or "You were really patient with me today, and I noticed." These aren't just pleasantries. They're reminders that kindness is not something you reserve for special days. It's how you love daily. At its deepest level, intimacy of kindness is about how you handle power. Every relationship has vulnerable moments, when one person is hurting, confused, or exposed. How the other responds reveals everything. To meet those moments not with judgment or control, but with softness, is to create a relationship that can weather life's hardest seasons. Kindness is not weakness. It's the most courageous form of love, because it chooses care even when ego wants to win. And in that choice, intimacy becomes not just sustainable, but sacred. A man forgets an important date, her promotion celebration. She's hurt, visibly. But instead of unloading all her anger in one breath, she pauses. She says, "I'm disappointed, but I also know you've had a lot on your mind. Can we talk about what happened?" In that moment, she doesn't excuse the oversight. She makes space for the humanity behind it. Her kindness doesn't erase her emotion. It dignifies both her truth and his. That conversation ends not in distance, but in a stronger bridge between them. In another home, he's having a panic attack. She's seen this before, but tonight it's worse. He's embarrassed, ashamed even. Instead of telling him to calm down or asking questions, she sits beside him, slowly breathing in sync with his breaths. She doesn't say a word. Her presence is calm, kind. Later, when he thanks her, she shrugs. "I know what it's like to need someone to just stay." That kind of kindness can't be taught in books. It's soul-level empathy that recognizes another person's inner child. Sometimes kindness is restraint. A woman says something in the middle of a fight that hits a nerve. Her partner has the perfect comeback lined up, the one that would cut deep and silence the room. But he doesn't say it. He closes his mouth, swallows the pride, and instead says, "I think we need to take a break before we say things we'll regret." That choice doesn't feel satisfying in the moment, but it's an act of protection for both of them. He chose connection over control. That's the quiet integrity of kindness. There's also the kindness of noticing emotional labor. A man watches his partner juggle tasks, making dinner, replying to texts from family, managing kids' bedtime. He doesn't just offer to help. He sees what she's carrying. He says, "I know you're doing a lot that doesn't always get named. I see how much you hold for this house, for me." She doesn't cry, but something melts in her chest. The emotional weight hasn't gone away, but now it's shared. That's what kindness does. It lightens burdens without being asked. Another couple is navigating a season of reinvention. She wants to change careers at 40. It terrifies her. Her partner doesn't push her to be rational. Instead, he listens to her fears, joins her in research, and tells her, "I'd rather see you try and be scared than stay stuck and safe." He doesn't need her to be impressive, just authentic. His kindness shows up in permission, in belief, in being a soft place for her to risk becoming someone new. Kindness lives in patience too. A woman recovering from a deep betrayal struggles to trust again. Her partner doesn't rush her healing or demand performance. He answers the same question a dozen times if needed, with the same calm tone. He says, "You don't have to hurry this. I'm not going anywhere." That kind of kindness isn't performative. It's endurance. It's proof that safety doesn't come from words, but from repeated presence. Even in the smallest actions, kindness whispers love. She always saves the last bite of dessert for him, even when she wants it. He fills up her gas tank before she notices it's empty. She warms his towel while he showers. He walks her to the car in the rain. These moments aren't transactional. They aren't keeping score. They say, I think of you even when you're not watching. That is the poetry of kindness, love made visible in ordinary time. Then there's forgiveness, the highest form of compassionate intimacy. A mistake is made, a wound reopens. Yet one partner chooses to say, I still want to understand you. I still believe in who we are beneath this pain. Forgiveness is never naive. It's brave. It doesn't dismiss accountability, but it holds it in love. That's where kindness becomes transformational. It doesn't just mend what was broken, it builds what didn't exist before. Trust rooted in grace. And perhaps the deepest act of all is allowing someone to evolve. To watch your partner change their mind, their needs, their way of expressing love. And to meet that change, not with fear, but with curiosity. You're not who I first met, one might say. But I'm still in awe of the person you're becoming. That's the heart of intimacy of kindness. It offers room to grow, without withholding affection. It doesn't cling to the version of you it liked best. It loves through the unfolding. And that is the kind of love that lasts. Intimacy of activity, freedom, choice, and togetherness in motion. Intimacy of activity is not about always doing things together. It's about honoring each other's rhythm of engagement with the world. It asks, can we be connected without being conjoined? Can we participate in life both together and apart without guilt or pressure? This principle is the antidote to codependency. It affirms that love doesn't mean merging identities. It means honoring personal desires while remaining emotionally tethered. When this principle is respected, relationships feel light, alive, and respectful. When it's violated, they begin to feel heavy, controlling, and silently resentful. Many couples fall into the trap of believing that love means constant participation in each other's hobbies, friendships, or social preferences. But intimacy of activity says, you don't have to love what I love to love me. One partner may thrive in bustling social gatherings, the other may need quiet solitude to recharge. One may love hiking at dawn, the other prefers slow mornings with tea and books. The healthiest partnerships allow space for that divergence, without guilt, withdrawal, or pressure to conform. This principle becomes most beautiful when rooted in mutual respect. Imagine a woman who's passionate about dance. Her partner doesn't share the same love for it, but he drops her off at class every Wednesday night and waits with a warm meal after. He honors her joy without needing to participate directly. That's intimacy. He isn't trying to own or oversee her activity. He simply supports her freedom to follow what lights her up. Equally, it shows up when someone says no with clarity. A man might not want to attend a crowded family event with his partner this time, not because he's disconnected, but because he's emotionally depleted. If his partner understands and doesn't guilt him, if she says, I'll miss you, but I get it, that's powerful. She's holding space for his boundary while maintaining connection. That kind of permission keeps love breathable. No pressure, no pretense. Intimacy of activity also includes the right to share joy, but without demand. A couple may both love cooking, but prefer to do it in different ways. One experimental and intuitive, the other precise and structured. When they try to cook together, it creates more stress than connection. So they compromise. They cook separate meals and then sit down to enjoy them together. That's honoring the activity and the bond, without forcing shared process. There's also an emotional maturity in not trying to make everything a couple's experience. When one partner wants to take a trip with friends, attend a retreat alone, or pursue a professional milestone independently, the other may feel left out. But intimacy of activity says, I can trust you to live a life that includes me, but isn't restricted to me. This trust expands love. It affirms that relationships don't need constant affirmation through sameness. They deepen through allowing difference. Sometimes, activity-based intimacy is co-creation, finding shared rituals that are chosen, not obligatory. Maybe it's a Sunday morning walk, or a quiet hour every night where phones are off and music plays while folding laundry. These don't need to be exciting. They just need to be mutually agreed upon. A rhythm of connection that says, we choose this together. That shared intention transforms routine into bonding. On the shadow side, when this principle is ignored, resentment simmers. One partner may feel stifled, like their desires are being filtered through the other's preferences. Or worse, they stop sharing new ideas or pursuits because they expect guilt or conflict. Over time, their individuality erodes. And when individuality erodes, attraction often follows. Passion requires space, and space, when held with respect, becomes fuel for desire, not distance. Ultimately, intimacy of activity is a love that allows movement. It doesn't grip. It doesn't coerce. It says, your joy matters, your energy matters, your yes matters, but so does your no. In this kind of intimacy, people return to each other not because they have to, but because they want to. That's the root of real connection, not forced participation, but chosen presence. Over and over again, she wakes early every Saturday to join her hiking group. Mud, wind, and quiet trails bring her alive. He prefers to sleep in, make a slow breakfast, and read in silence. At first, it bothered him. Why didn't she want to share those mornings with him? But over time, he learned to see her return from the mountains as something sacred. She walks through the door flushed with wind, glowing with her own freedom. He doesn't join her, but he cherishes who she becomes out there. That's intimacy, not in joining, but in celebrating each other's chosen joy. He's part of a weekly game night with friends, something she's never really understood. She doesn't care about the rules, the dice, the fantasy worlds, but every time he comes home, energized and laughing, she listens to his stories. She teases him playfully, but always with warmth. She never asks him to stop going, never pulls guilt into the space, and he never hides how much it means to him. There's no tension because their intimacy allows each other to hold separate joy without apology. In another home, a couple is invited to a social gathering. One partner feels the weight of social anxiety pressing in. They don't want to go. In the past, this would have triggered arguments, accusations of being unsupportive or antisocial. But now, the response is different. Their partner says, "I'd love to have you there, but I also want you to do what's right for your nervous system." That moment becomes a gesture of deep care. They're not trying to mold each other into emotional replicas. They're creating a partnership that leaves room for difference. Sometimes intimacy is knowing when not to ask for company. She wants to attend a grief circle, a space to mourn quietly with strangers. She could invite her partner, but she senses this is something she needs to do alone. When she explains that, he doesn't take it personally. Instead, he offers to drive her and wait in the car if she needs him afterward. That's tenderness in motion. Support doesn't always mean walking beside. It can mean holding the perimeter so someone can walk in peace. Then there's the shared activity that unfolds not from sameness, but from overlapping passion. A couple discovers they both love music, but in completely different ways. One plays instruments. The other curates playlists and creates ambient soundscapes. Instead of forcing one another into their worlds, they collaborate on a Sunday night ritual. She plays while he mixes. They don't need to explain their process. Their activities don't match, but they meet, harmonize, and feed something greater than either could alone. A couple with young children navigates the delicate balance of personal time and shared parenting. He needs gym time 3 evenings a week. It keeps him mentally clear. She needs a weekly pottery class to feel creative and whole. At first, both felt the strain of giving the other space. Time apart often looked like abandonment in their early relationship. But now they've matured. They take turns. They honor each other's commitments. And they return to parenting fuller, lighter, more anchored in self. That rhythm saves them, not just as partners, but as individuals. A woman decides to join a political activism group that challenges her partner's views. He's uncomfortable, not with her beliefs, but with the potential tension it might bring. Still, he listens. He asks thoughtful questions. He tells her, "You're allowed to care about things I don't fully understand." That moment expands their intimacy, not because they agree, but because he honors her desire to act, to move, to belong to something meaningful outside their relationship. In another story, an artist wants to collaborate with someone she once had feelings for. Her partner feels the flicker of insecurity rise, but instead of issuing ultimatums, he speaks honestly. This brings things up for me, but I also trust your heart. She hears him, validates his feeling, and still moves forward with her creative project, with boundaries, with clarity, but without shame. They grow not by avoiding complexity, but by holding it together. That's mature intimacy, based not on control, but on communication and mutual respect. And finally, there's the couple who spends a quiet evening doing different things in the same room, one writing poetry, the other sketching. No words, just shared presence. Occasionally, they look up, share a smile, return to their flow. This is the essence of intimacy of activity, companionship without pressure, being fully oneself, yet not alone, moving freely, yet feeling held. It's in these quiet moments, free from performance, full of permission, that real love stretches out, unclenched, and quietly blooms. Intimacy of growth, the courage to evolve, together and apart. Intimacy of growth is perhaps one of the most confronting and liberating principles in intimate relationships. It asks a radical question: can we love each other and still allow room to become someone new? It means accepting that your partner is not a fixed personality, but a living, changing process. That you, too, are evolving. And that a healthy relationship doesn't just tolerate this transformation, but makes space for it. Without this principle, intimacy becomes a cage. With it, intimacy becomes a garden, messy, unpredictable, but always alive. Growth in partnership doesn't mean growing at the same pace or in the same direction all the time. It means respecting that your timelines will differ. One partner may be undergoing a spiritual awakening. The other may be focused on career stability. One may want to explore therapy or creativity, while the other needs rest and grounding. Intimacy of growth says, your path doesn't threaten mine. I can witness your unfolding without losing myself. That takes trust, maturity, and deep inner security. But let's be real. Growth can destabilize comfort. When a partner starts becoming more expressive, more confident, or more independent, it can trigger the other's fear of being left behind. The ego says, why are you changing? But love, real love, says, tell me who you're becoming. Let me know this new you. Intimacy of growth is the choice to keep meeting your partner again and again instead of expecting them to remain familiar. This principle also means being self-honoring. You don't abandon yourself to make the relationship work. You don't shrink so your partner can shine. Nor do you dim your evolution to keep things comfortable. You say, I want to grow, and I want to do it near you, but not at the expense of me. A relationship that honors growth allows both people to explore new edges of identity while still being rooted in mutual respect. And yes, sometimes growth includes acknowledging that love and nurturing may come from more than one source. This could be through deep friendships, mentors, spiritual communities, or even in some open or polyamorous relationships, other romantic connections. This doesn't mean a lack of love. It means recognizing that no single person can meet all needs at all times. Intimacy of growth says, I trust your longing to be nourished, even when it's not always through me. That might sound radical, but it's also honest. So many partnerships suffer under the weight of unrealistic expectations. You have to be my everything. But when we remove the pressure to be all things at once, we create breathing room. Space to come back to each other, not out of obligation, but from genuine desire. Growth, in this sense, becomes magnetic. We remain curious about each other because we're not confined to old versions of who we were. It's also important to acknowledge that growth doesn't always look like expansion. Sometimes it's internal, invisible. Your partner may be grieving something you don't fully understand. They may be sitting with old wounds, and their growth may look like stillness or pulling back. Intimacy of growth says, I don't need you to perform transformation. I honor the seasons where nothing is blooming yet. Patience becomes love's highest form in these moments. This kind of intimacy also requires us to outgrow the myth that love means constant proximity. Sometimes honoring each other's growth means physical or emotional space. One may take a retreat, another may need solitude. Distance, when chosen consciously, can deepen connection. It allows us to return to each other not out of dependency, but clarity. It says, I missed you, but I found more of myself too. That dual awareness is where mature intimacy lives. Ultimately, intimacy of growth is about loving someone without needing to keep them small. It's about standing beside them, not over them. It's about saying, I will walk with you while you find your wings, and I will not punish you for flying. When two people honor their own and each other's evolution, they don't just build a relationship, they build a sanctuary. A place where change is not feared, but welcomed, where love adapts, stretches, and holds space for every version of who we are becoming. A woman begins therapy after years of suppressing childhood trauma. She starts setting firmer boundaries, saying no more often, needing space to process. Her partner, used to her constant emotional availability, feels confused, even hurt. But instead of reacting with blame, he leans in with compassion. He says, I miss the version of you I knew, but I want to meet this version too, even if it takes time. That moment doesn't erase the discomfort, but it becomes a turning point. He chooses presence over control. That's growth-literate love. Elsewhere, a man begins exploring his creative identity, writing poetry, joining an artist's group, dreaming of publishing. His partner, who's always known him as practical and contained, feels unsure. She's proud, but threatened by the change. Will he become someone she no longer relates to? Yet rather than close off, she reads his work, attends his readings, says, I don't always get the poems, but I love the parts of you they reveal. That's not just support, it's intimacy through evolution. In another relationship, one partner discovers a desire for spiritual practice, meditation, energy work, sacred sexuality. The other is more grounded, more skeptical. But they don't mock or resist. They ask questions. They hold the incense stick, even if it's unfamiliar. They say, this may not be my path, but I want to understand what it's giving you. That willingness opens a door. The couple begins to bridge their inner worlds, not by agreement, but by respect. Sometimes, growth means realizing love is still present, but its expression must shift. A couple that's been together for 12 years begins to explore the idea of ethical non-monogamy. One partner feels drawn to connection beyond the relationship, not because of dissatisfaction, but because of a calling toward deeper exploration of self and others. The other partner is scared, but not reactive. They say, this challenges everything I thought I needed, but I want to understand what this desire is about. Through ongoing conversation, therapy, boundaries, and consent, they don't just preserve trust, they deepen it. Love stretches, but does not tear. Growth also looks like confronting inherited patterns. A woman raised in a household of silence begins learning how to express anger. She starts raising her voice, not violently, but honestly. Her partner, unused to this, recoils at first, but instead of shutting her down, he listens. He says, I want to understand what this anger is protecting. Help me be safe for it. That's not easy. It's vulnerable, disorienting, but it allows for emotional intimacy that was never available in their previous dynamic. Then there's the man who decides to change careers in midlife, to leave a secure job and pursue something uncertain but meaningful. His partner could have panicked. Instead, she says, if this matters to your soul, then I'm with you, even through the mess. She takes on more household responsibility during the transition, not forever, but enough to give him space to reimagine himself. He feels supported, not rescued, and their love grows not through success, but through solidarity. Growth isn't always vertical. Sometimes it means healing old wounds within the relationship. A partner who was unfaithful years ago has spent time in deep accountability. The one who was hurt begins slowly to trust again. Every time they voice fear, and the other listens without defensiveness, something new is planted. They begin to grow, not back into the relationship they had, but forward into a version shaped by truth, resilience, and choice. There's also the subtle beauty of quiet evolution. A couple who once shared every activity now finds themselves drawn to separate interests, one to hiking, the other to pottery. They no longer do everything together, and that's okay. They don't interpret space as absence. Instead, they return home with new stories, new energies. They say, I missed you today, and I love what you're becoming. That rhythm of separation and return becomes its own kind of intimacy. And finally, sometimes growth means letting go, not in anger, but in love. A couple reaches a point where their growth paths begin to move apart. Neither person is wrong, but they look at each other, and one says, I will never stop loving you, but I also don't want to stand in the way of who you're becoming. They part not as enemies, but as witnesses of each other's unfolding. That kind of departure is not failure, It's sacred release, a final act of love that makes room for both souls to keep growing freely. Intimacy of allowance, the grace to be as you are without permission. Intimacy of allowance is the quiet courage to let your partner be fully human without conditions, edits, or expectations that suffocate their spontaneity. It's not about letting things slide. It's about making room for the full spectrum of being: moods, contradictions, inconsistencies, evolution. This principle invites us to love not a performance, not a projection, but a person, alive, shifting, and sacred in all their messiness. Without this kind of allowance, relationships become tight-laced theaters of perfection. With it, they become sanctuaries for truth. We live in a world obsessed with managing image, so it's no surprise that many couples unconsciously expect each other to remain consistent, palatable, and emotionally efficient. But life doesn't work that way. Some days your partner will be joyful, other days they'll be withdrawn. They might oscillate between tenderness and irritability. Allowance means holding space for these fluctuations without immediately labeling them as wrong, threatening, or requiring fixing. It means saying, "You get to be complex. I won't punish you for being real." This principle becomes most necessary during emotional turbulence. Your partner may be grieving, uncertain, anxious, or simply in a funk. They may not be able to show up for you the way they usually do. Intimacy of allowance says, "I won't define you by this moment. I'll walk with you through it." That's not enabling. That's grace. It's refusing to reduce someone to their hardest day. And paradoxically, that allowance often becomes the very environment where healing can unfold. Allowance also means letting your partner live according to their inner clock. Some people are slow processors. Others leap before they think. Some need to talk things out immediately. Others need solitude to make sense of what they feel. When we force partners to move at our pace, we confuse control for closeness. But intimacy says, "Take the time you need. I'm still here." Love deepens when neither person feels rushed toward resolution or demanded to feel ready when they're not. This isn't always easy, especially when what your partner expresses challenges your sense of stability. They may question their faith, their sexuality, their career, their desires. They may even question the relationship. Intimacy of allowance doesn't mean suppressing your own fear or pretending it doesn't hurt, but it does mean not collapsing into control. It means breathing through discomfort and asking, "How can I witness you without making this about my need for certainty?" That's where true emotional maturity begins. Allowance is also radical when it comes to emotional expression. One partner may cry easily, the other may shut down. One may get loud in anger, while the other goes quiet. Instead of pathologizing these reactions, allowance creates understanding. I see your reaction not as a failure of character, but as the language of your nervous system. That doesn't mean all behaviors are okay, but it means you respond from inquiry, not judgment. You learn each other's wiring with tenderness, not demands for change. In long-term relationships, this becomes even more vital. Over time, people change. They get tired, they fall apart, they rise, they redefine their dreams. Intimacy of allowance means keeping the channel open, even when your partner surprises you, disappoints you, or doesn't meet the version of them you once knew. It's not about abandoning boundaries. It's about refusing to confuse love with ownership. Your partner does not belong to you. They belong to themselves and choose to walk beside you. This principle also calls us to honor our own need for allowance. Sometimes we seek perfection within ourselves to avoid burdening our partner. We hide our mess. But real intimacy says, "I trust this space enough to be undone in it." When both people allow themselves and each other to show up as they are, unpolished, moody, confused, radiant, unsure, something rare happens. The relationship becomes a place of emotional truth, not just emotional performance. Ultimately, intimacy of allowance is the love that doesn't grip. It watches, listens, holds, but never confines. It trusts that even in imperfection, presence is enough. That love doesn't always need answers. That the truest safety isn't in control, it's in being allowed to just be. And in that allowance, love breathes. Not because it's certain, but because it's real. She's quiet during dinner, not withdrawn, but distant. He feels it, the shift in her energy. Years ago, he would have pushed, "What's wrong? Are you upset with me?" But now he leans back. He lets her be. Later that night, she slips into bed beside him and whispers, "Thank you for not making me explain myself. I just needed to be inside my own skin today." That moment becomes more intimate than any conversation. She didn't need to be fixed. She needed to be allowed. In another house, a man is questioning everything: his career, his beliefs, even how he understands himself. His partner could take it personally, panic, try to stabilize the change. Instead, she listens. She doesn't offer premature encouragement or reassurance. She simply says, "I'm here for all of it, even if it makes no sense yet." Her presence becomes a tether, not a cage. In that freedom, he opens up even more, because she's not rushing his becoming. One night, she bursts into tears over something small. He had forgotten to pick up groceries. It wasn't about the food, and they both knew it. In the past, he might have defended himself, shamed her for being too emotional. But now he wraps his arms around her and says, "It's okay. Cry for whatever this is really about." She sobs harder, releasing something old and heavy. He doesn't even need to understand it all. He just needs to stay. Then there's the man who tells his partner, "I don't want to go to the wedding with you this weekend. I'm too overwhelmed to socialize." She could guilt him. After all, they RSVP'd together. But instead she nods. "I'll tell them you're not coming. I want you to have what you need." That night, he sends her a photo of the meal he cooked for himself. She sends back a photo of her dress. No bitterness, no passive aggression, just two people honoring their bandwidth, separately but lovingly. In another story, a couple has just had a disagreement. She needs time to walk it off. He needs to talk through it now. In the early years, this mismatch would have triggered anxiety, but now they've learned the rhythm. She says, "I'm not leaving you. I just need an hour." He nods, breathes, waits. When she returns, her voice is clearer, her heart open. They resolve it not because they rushed it, but because they allowed the space to meet each other well. A woman changes her mind about a move, a job, something she once said she wanted. Her partner doesn't throw her inconsistency back at her like a weapon. He doesn't say, "But you said." Instead, he responds, "Okay, then what do you need now?" In that simple phrase, she feels safe to be fluid, to revise herself without fear of punishment. That safety becomes the foundation for more honest decisions in their future. Allowance is also honoring silence. After a loss, he barely speaks for days. She doesn't flood him with questions. She sits beside him in the living room, reads her book, sometimes rubs his back gently. He doesn't need to be cheered up. He needs a witness. When he finally speaks, it's not because she pried, it's because she waited with dignity. Her stillness said, "You don't owe me coherence right now. I'll stay until it comes." There's also the day-to-day, how they deal with moods. He gets irritable when he's hungry. She gets foggy when she's overstimulated. Instead of mocking or correcting, they've learned to adapt around each other. She keeps snacks in her bag. He creates quiet zones when she's drained. These aren't big deals, but over time, these micro allowances create macro safety. They say, "I understand how you function, and I want to support your system, not fight it." And finally, there's the moment one says, "I need to not be strong today," and the other doesn't react with worry or shame. They say, "Then let me carry the day for both of us." That's allowance too, not just for who someone is, but for who they are right now. In that moment, no one is the master, no one is the servant. They're simply two humans, giving each other the grace to breathe, to collapse, to be reborn, without having to ask for permission first. Intimacy of giving, love as the act of offering without demand. Intimacy of giving is the foundation of all real connection, not because it asks, but because it offers. It's the kind of love that isn't waiting for a transaction, tally, or return. It gives because that's what love does. It creates safety, not through control or performance, but through presence and generosity. And not just material generosity, but emotional, energetic, and spiritual. When this principle is alive, relationships become places of nourishment. When it's missing, they become battlegrounds for unmet expectations and withheld affection. This principle is not about self-sacrifice to the point of depletion. It's not about martyrdom or giving from guilt. It's about giving from overflow, from alignment, from the deep joy that comes from seeing someone you love feel safe, supported, and known. True giving doesn't ask, "What will I get in return?" It asks, "What does love want to offer through me in this moment?" And in answering that, we discover a form of intimacy that doesn't shrink the giver, but expands both people. Giving can be as grand as rearranging your life to support your partner through crisis, or as subtle as warming their coffee cup before they wake up. It lives in the tone of your voice, the timing of your silence, the way you hold your partner's hand when they don't even know they need to be held. It's in the questions you ask, not because you're curious, but because you want them to feel seen. Giving is never just the thing, it's the spirit behind it. Safety is the most essential gift here. You offer the kind of energy where your partner can let their guard down, where they can stumble, fumble, be messy, unsure, or in pain, and know they will not be judged. That doesn't mean ignoring your own boundaries. It means bringing your strength in service of softness. Giving safety is saying, you don't need to be perfect here. You don't need to brace. That one offering can heal years of emotional tension. There's also the nurturing that comes in understanding someone's love language and speaking it fluently, not to manipulate, but to tend. Maybe your partner thrives on words of affirmation, so you leave them notes, not for applause, but because you know it lands. Or maybe they feel most loved through acts of service. So you take on a task they've been dreading, not to earn points, but to lighten their world. Giving becomes a way to say, your ease matters to me. But what makes this principle powerful is when we give. Not just when it's easy or convenient, but when it's needed most. When your partner is hard to love, closed off, or consumed by something difficult. When you choose to give patience, grace, warmth, not because they earned it that day, but because you remember who they are. That's the kind of giving that builds trust. It says, I give because I see beyond the moment. Giving also requires attunement. It's not just giving what you think is needed. It's learning to give what they need, when and how they can receive it. Maybe they don't want advice, they want quiet company. Maybe they don't need solutions, they need validation. Real giving listens first. It doesn't impose. It opens its hands, not its instructions. There's also the giving of space, not distance, but room. Letting your partner breathe without filling every silence. Trusting that love doesn't mean constant contact. Sometimes, the greatest gift is the freedom to return, to say, take the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. That kind of emotional spaciousness is rare. It gives without clutching, and in doing so, it invites deeper intimacy than any grasp ever could. At its heart, intimacy of giving is about choosing to be a place where love flows, not bottlenecks, where your care isn't reactive or reluctant, but freely given from a place of wholeness. When both partners give, not to compete, but to contribute, a relationship stops being a negotiation and becomes a sanctuary. And in that space, love doesn't just survive, it flourishes. Not because it was earned, but because it was offered, again and again with open hands. He knows she hates waking up early, but on the morning of her big presentation, he sets his alarm anyway. He makes her coffee just the way she likes it, strong, oat milk, no sugar. He warms her scarf in the dryer before handing it to her. She doesn't ask, she doesn't expect. He just gives. Not to be praised, not to score points, but because love, for him, is creating calm in her nerves. She leaves the house with more than preparation. She carries the warmth of being held, unseen but steady. She sees him coming home late again, shoulders tense, eyes heavy. He's not in the mood to talk. Years ago, she would have taken it personally. But now, she simply lays out a change of clothes, lights a candle in the bathroom, and runs him a hot shower. He finds it without comment, but she hears his sigh from across the hallway, the exhale of being cared for in silence. That's the giving that doesn't ask for recognition. It just meets the moment where it aches. In a different home, he's spiraling with self-doubt, questioning his career, his worth, his future. She sits with him in the dim light of their living room, not trying to cheer him up, not flooding him with positivity. She just listens. When he finally stops speaking, she reaches over and places a hand on his chest and says, "You're still mine, even in this." That offering of presence, of reassurance, of non-fix-it love doesn't erase his struggle, but it makes it bearable. Sometimes giving is the courage to let your partner not give back. She's overwhelmed, distant, unavailable in ways that are uncharacteristic. He doesn't guilt her. He doesn't chase reassurance. He simply holds the integrity of his own care, continues to show up with quiet devotion. One day she emerges and says, "I didn't have it in me to love you well, but you loved me through it anyway." In that recognition, the bond deepens, not through performance, but through endurance. Giving can be tender and playful too. He knows she loves childhood cereal, but rarely buys it for herself. So one day, he leaves a box of it on the passenger seat of her car with a note, "Because you're still someone's kid inside." She laughs, then cries. It's not about the cereal, it's about the knowing. That kind of gift says, "I pay attention to the parts of you that don't ask to be noticed." Then there's the giving that requires sacrifice, not martyrdom, but real rearrangement. She has an opportunity abroad, and it matters deeply to her. He's scared. He doesn't want the distance, but he doesn't hold her back. He says, "Go, I'll be here. Let your dream breathe." He helps her pack, sends her off with tears in his eyes, not because he's losing her, but because he refuses to love her by limiting her. That kind of giving isn't just support, it's liberation. Another day, they fight. Words are said that cut. They go silent, cold, separated by pride and pain. But before bed, one of them gets up, walks to the other side of the bed, and simply places their hand over their partner's. No apology yet, just a gesture. "I still want to stay." That's a gift too. The giving of repair before ego is ready. It's the offering of closeness even while hearts are raw. Giving also shows up in restraint. She's about to say something she knows will sting. True, but cruel. But she swallows it, not out of fear, but out of care. She pauses, rephrases, softens. That edit is a gift of emotional safety, the decision not to wound, even when justified. Love doesn't require us to stop being human, but it asks us to give our sharpness only in service of truth, not harm. And finally, there is the gift of constancy. Years in, when novelty fades and routine settles in, giving looks like doing the dishes when it's not your turn, saying "I love you" first, refilling the water jug, charging their phone overnight. These things don't sparkle, but they stack. And one day you look back and realize this is what built the foundation. Not the grand declarations, but the daily, ordinary, unwavering choice to give, even when no one is keeping score. Intimacy of receiving, the grace to let love in fully and freely. Intimacy of receiving is the often forgotten half of love's equation. We're taught how to give, how to show up, serve, support. But few of us are taught how to receive, to let someone's love touch us, nourish us, and enter our most unguarded spaces without apology or self-doubt. This principle invites us to understand that real intimacy requires not just the ability to offer love, but the courage to be loved, fully, receptively, with gratitude rather than guilt. Receiving is not passive, it's deeply active. It requires presence, trust, and a willingness to feel worthy. Many of us struggle here. We flinch at compliments, downplay kindness, or dismiss praise. We've internalized the belief that to receive too much makes us selfish, dependent, or weak. But in truth, receiving well is a sign of abundance. It means we know love is not scarce. We know that by letting it in, we're completing the circle of connection. At its essence, intimacy of receiving is about allowing someone else's care to land, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Can you receive a back rub without apologizing for being tired? Can you take in your partner's admiration without deflecting? Can you receive their listening without guilt, their forgiveness without shame, their attention without suspicion? Every time you say yes to those things, you say yes to intimacy. You say yes to love reaching you. This kind of receiving deepens when we stop seeing ourselves as burdens. Your partner brings you soup when you're sick. You say thank you, not "you didn't have to." You let their effort be for you, and you allow yourself to be cared for without scrambling to repay. This shifts the relationship from transactional to relational. Love becomes less about keeping things even, and more about staying open, honest, and connected in the flow. Receiving also means letting yourself be known, not the curated version, not the one with answers and armor, the real one, the messy, tender, unfinished version. When you let your partner see your confusion, your need, your grief, and you let them hold it, you are practicing the highest form of intimacy. You are saying, "I trust you enough to let my guard down. I believe you can meet me here." That belief heals, for both. And this principle works across all levels. On the physical level, it's letting your body soften into touch, not performing, not tensing, just receiving, whether it's a kiss, a held hand, or the warmth of a blanket tucked around you. On the emotional level, it's letting someone's love reach the parts of you that were told you're too much or not enough. On the mental level, it's allowing your partner's perspective, insight, or praise to shift you, not because you need fixing, but because you're open to being influenced by love. Many people who are strong givers struggle to receive. They identify with being the nurturer, the stable one, the emotional backbone. But sometimes true strength is shown in vulnerability. Letting yourself be on the receiving end, of help, of softness, of being the one held, requires you to release control. It asks you to trust that love doesn't need to be earned every moment, that it can simply arrive and be welcomed. This principle also invites stillness. When you stop striving, fixing, managing, and just receive your partner's presence, you create intimacy without effort. You sit together in silence. You let them look at you a little longer. You say thank you without brushing it off. These moments recalibrate love. They root it in shared being rather than shared doing. Ultimately, intimacy of receiving is about letting yourself be a home for love. It's the grace of allowing another's offering to enter your world and stay, not as proof of your value, but as confirmation of your openness. It's saying, I trust you, I trust myself, and I trust that love, real love, wants to nourish us both. When this principle is alive, relationships stop feeling like effort and start feeling like belonging. Not because everything is perfect, but because love has a place to land. He surprises her with a weekend getaway. She's touched, but her first instinct is to say, you didn't have to do all this. He looks at her and replies gently, I know, I wanted to. She pauses, softens, and says instead, thank you. This means a lot. That shift, from deflection to reception, changes everything. She lets herself be held by his effort, not just logistically, but emotionally. In that moment, the love he offered reaches her, and he feels it. That's the real exchange. She's had a hard week, work tension, unresolved grief, hormonal exhaustion. He offers to make dinner, draw her a bath, sit beside her while she soaks. Every part of her wants to say, no, I'm fine. I don't want to be a bother. But she catches it. Instead, she exhales and lets him do it. Later, she whispers, I didn't realize how much I needed to be cared for until I let myself receive it. That's the miracle of this principle. Love not just given, but accepted. He stands in front of the mirror, shirtless, critical of his body. Years of quiet shame still live in his skin. She walks in, wraps her arms around his back, and kisses the base of his neck. You're beautiful, she says. He laughs it off, tries to dodge her reflection, but she holds firm. No, really, let me see you. This time, he stays, doesn't turn away. He doesn't fully believe it yet, but he allows it. That's receiving, too. Not agreement, but letting love enter the doubt. She tells him, in the middle of an ordinary moment, I'm really proud of you, for how you've grown, how you keep showing up. He's uncomfortable. He wants to change the subject, but instead he swallows hard, looks into her eyes, and simply says, thank you for noticing. In that moment, something shifts. He's not just hearing her words, he's letting them land. He's allowing her reflection of him to soften the walls he's kept up for years. They're lying in bed. He's stroking her back, slowly, without agenda. She turns to him and says, why do you always touch me like I'm something precious? He doesn't hesitate. Because you are. She feels her throat tighten, not with sadness, but with the tenderness she's not used to letting in. She presses her forehead to his chest and lets herself cry. Not because she's in pain, but because being that received, fully, without explanation, undoes something old inside her. He writes her a love letter, raw, handwritten, full of things he never says out loud. When he gives it to her, she fights the urge to minimize it. Instead, she reads it slowly, carefully, with tears in her eyes. When she's done, she doesn't rush to praise or match it. She just lets the silence hold the moment and says, I'll keep this forever. He doesn't need anything more. His love wasn't just given, it was received. That's what made it sacred. Sometimes receiving is wordless. She places her head in his lap while they watch TV. He doesn't speak, just strokes her hair for a long time. Her body softens, her breathing slows. She doesn't need to explain the exhaustion or justify the need. She just lets herself be held. That's intimacy at its purest. Not negotiated, not narrated, just felt. In another life, he was taught that men should always provide, never depend. But now, when he breaks down, over work, over his father's health, over the pressure, he doesn't hide. He lets her hold him, rub his back, whisper, "You don't have to carry all of this alone." And for the first time in a long time, he lets someone witness his vulnerability without shame. Receiving becomes a reclamation of softness, of humanity, of partnership. And then there's the daily beauty. She makes his favorite breakfast without asking. He pauses, takes a bite, looks at her and says, "You make me feel so loved." Not because of the food, but because he lets it reach him. Not just his stomach, but his heart. That's what receiving does. It transforms the ordinary into intimacy, not by asking for more, but by fully letting in what's already there.